6 men.
This is almost impossible.
One tiny wooden boat.
I'm soaking wet, hundreds of miles from anywhere.
And the most dangerous feat of survival in the history of exploration.
The waves are breaking all around us.
Can these men repeat the extraordinary achievements of Sir Ernest Shackleton?
The whole thing is a bloody huge challenge.
Sail 800 nautical miles of the roughest ocean on Earth.
If you don't respect it, he'll kill you.
With no engine.
This is what's going to get us there.
100-year-old clothes.
I can't feel any of my fingers.
No GPS.
And massive errors.
This is just a survival existence.
And then climb a deadly mountain range.
This is an extremely remote place.
My daughter and my wife are worried that I'm not going to ever see them again.
My God, it's hard work. We literally are last chance saloon.
In 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton led an expedition to cross Antarctica on foot for the first time. But disaster struck before reaching the continent. His boat was crushed in sea ice, and Shackleton and his 27 men were marooned. They took refuge in 3 lifeboats on nearby Elephant Island. With no way of contacting the outside world, they were facing slow death from starvation and exposure.
Shackleton had absolutely no choice to depend on the luck of a ship coming and finding them on Elephant Island. Absolutely no chance in my opinion, and therefore he had to do a rescue party.
The only possible help lay 800 nautical miles or nearly 1,500 kilometers away in the Stromness whaling station on South Georgia. Getting there meant crossing the roughest ocean on the planet in a 22-foot or 6.7-meter wooden lifeboat. If they had miscalculated their course by even a single degree, they would have been flung into 3,000 miles of open ocean with no means of rescue or getting back. Against all odds, Shackleton and 5 men survived 16 days at sea and made the crossing. Then they had to scale an uncharted mountain range to reach the whaling stations. Shackleton was able to successfully raise the alarm, rescue all his men, and return home a hero. It's still regarded as the greatest feat of survival in the history of polar exploration and has never been repeated.
Shackleton was such a good leader that he managed to get everybody out alive, and that was brilliant.
No one truly understands how Shackleton pulled off such an incredible feat in such atrocious conditions. Now, one man has made it his life's mission to find out in the only way possible.
It captured my imagination a long time ago, the story of Shackleton and what he managed to achieve. It seems a logical conclusion to try and attempt this journey because it's the biggest one you can do.
Tim Jarvis is a veteran polar adventurer who risks his life to discover how early explorers survived the toughest conditions on Earth.
Today was the hardest day.
I love pushing myself to the limit of what I think I'm capable of doing because it teaches me new things about myself. You learn so much at the boundary of what you're capable of doing.
Tim's career has been building up to this point. He's about to see if he and 5 men can survive Shackleton's death-defying boat journey and mountain crossing. He spent 4 years trying to make the modern expedition as true to Shackleton's experience as possible, to gain real insight into just how he did it. His team will wear identical 1914 clothing, eat the same basic rations, and try to sail in an inch-perfect replica of Shackleton's wooden boat.
We want to try and see exactly what it was that made Shackleton tick and really try and get below the skin of the man. The only way to do it is to really put yourself in exactly the same position as him.
Through very practical and bold behavior and a good choice of men, he succeeded.
Tim's recruited some of the world's bravest adventurers.
We're doing something in this boat that it's just not designed to do. And it is the roughest ocean in the world, so anything could happen on this trip.
Cheerio. It's really hard to leave family behind when you're embarking on something that's so dangerous.
Just getting to the starting point for the expedition is an epic journey. The team fly to Ushuaia in Argentina, then sail 500 miles to the Antarctic Peninsula. After a week's traveling, the team and their support vessel, the Australis, are at King George Island.
We've got some amazing mountains and backdrops, but it's cold.
This is probably the harshest environment on the planet. In Antarctica, temperatures drop to minus 89 degrees Celsius, winds hit 200 miles an hour, and storms generate waves up to 15 meters high. The expedition's only protection will be their small wooden boat.
We're not sure where the boat is, it's somewhere here, so a few of us are going to go ashore and try and find out what's actually going on.
Expedition engineer Seb Coulthard is first to head ashore with Tim.
Can wait. Let's see this boat.
Seb is an aerospace engineer with the Royal Navy. He's used to fixing the world's most powerful jet engines, but has dedicated every spare moment of the last 2 years to manage the building of the Alexandra Shackleton.
I love it. I love this boat. Shackleton's open boat journey is known across the world as the greatest open boat journey ever undertaken by man. And to follow those footsteps, following the wake of that boat, it really is a privilege to do it, to experience it for yourself. It's immaculate.
The first job for Tim and the crew is to launch the Alexandra Shackleton.
3 cheers for the Alexandra Shackleton! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip! Hooray!
I've seen the sea at its worst on board very large ships, and it was scary then. And we're proposing to do something very similar in a boat that's 22 feet long, made from wood. It is frightening, you know.
I would hate to make the voyage in a small sailing boat because those seas go round and round Antarctica with nothing in the way, and they get to be this huge swell, and any form of crisscross wind onto the swell turns it into a cauldron.
Next, they must finish rigging the sails and the cameras.
Yeah, the last of the cameras going on today. We've got the 2 mast-top cameras. This will be the last time we set them up.
100 years ago, Shackleton took Frank Hurley, the greatest expedition cameraman of his day, to document his journey. To film this expedition, Tim has recruited extreme filmmaker Ed Wardle. Ed has climbed Everest twice.
We're waiting for the rest of the climbers so that we can film them.
And is a record-breaking free diver.
Okay.
Ed's predecessor, Frank Hurley, captured some of the most iconic Antarctic images in history, but was left behind on Elephant Island. He didn't sail as part of the rescue mission or cross the mountains of South Georgia.
That for me is the driving reason why I'm going, because there isn't a single frame, a single bit of footage about that journey, and I get to record that and show people what happened.
Ed's recordings will reveal the challenges and threats Shackleton had to overcome 100 years ago. With the boat rigged and ready, the final step is to head to the expedition starting point on Elephant Island.
Getting to Elephant Island was absolutely critical. All of us want to leave from where Shackleton left from.
After 14 months living on the Antarctic ice, Shackleton arrived on Elephant Island with 27 of his men. On reaching shore, he wrote, "The icy fingers of the gale searched every cranny of our beach. The rising sea beat against the rocks and tossed fragments of floe ice within a few feet of our boats."
when you become skeletal and lose your body fat. Cold like that is just a different world of nastiness.
Shackleton knew they couldn't survive there for long. There was no chance of a search being made for us. The health and mental condition of several men were causing me serious anxiety. A boat journey in search of relief was necessary. If we did not make South Georgia, we were sure to go under. Coming up,
Hold on, chap. Hey!
the crew begin their mission.
We actually have set off.
Big waves up there.
The Southern Ocean unleashes its fury,
It is one hellish journey.
and the Alexandra Shackleton is lost at sea.
Alexandra Shackleton, Alexandra Shackleton.
It's the first day of the expedition.
Morning. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Today's the day.
Showtime.
Tim Jarvis and his crew are about to attempt the greatest feat in expedition history, Shackleton's death-defying boat journey and mountain crossing.
Exciting morning. Yeah, this is it.
From now until the expedition ends, they will wear replica 1914 clothing. Their aim is to sail as Shackleton did, with no help or GPS, in a tiny wooden boat from Elephant Island across 800 nautical miles of the roughest ocean on Earth to South Georgia. The starting line for their expedition is Point Wild, the precise spot of departure for Shackleton's deadly rescue mission nearly 100 years ago.
It is incredible to think that we are about to cross his path now. It's an exciting moment. Everything's coming. Here we are standing on the very spot that Shackleton left his men at almost 100 years ago. It's a desolate spot, but what a place. What a place to have been left.
Shackleton said of Point Wild, the spit was rough, bleak, and inhospitable. Just an acre or two of rock or shingle, the outlook was cheerless. They lived in upturned boats and ate penguin and seal flesh.
If he'd stayed put, they would have died. So I don't think that Shackleton had any other choice of survival other than doing precisely what he did do.
It just must have been such a painful thing going through his head that he's going to have to pick a few guys and just head out into what was pretty much a suicide mission, you know? It was just a mad idea.
When Shackleton left, he thought he'd got all of these men into this situation. He didn't know whether he was going to be able to get them out. He didn't know whether he'd survive himself. The task in front of us now is very hard. It's exactly the same as what he was faced with, essentially.
Tim and his team are about to risk their lives to discover how Shackleton survived the boat journey.
Well, lads, here we are. It's amazing to be here with you. We're the best people to do this job. And I just hope as modern men in the modern era, we can do justice to the incredible legacy that was Ernest Shackleton and the journey of his men. It's going to be one hell of a thing to do. But I think with the right team, and I think we're going to give this a bloody good crack. So let's go for it. Okay, how about a huddle? A huddle. Okay.
I've waited a long time for this. And it is scary, but at the same time, it's bloody great. It's just the adventure of a lifetime.
There's no GPS anymore, there's no digital clocks. It is going to be a huge challenge. Can we do it? I'm not entirely sure if we can.
We're about to head off on what is undoubtedly the most dangerous thing I've ever done, and I'm sure everybody else too. Fingers crossed, and touch wood, and may the gods be with us if there are any gods. We're going to need as much luck as Shackleton had.
Like Shackleton, Tim can't risk smashing the wooden boat on the rocky beach, so the crew transfer aboard offshore.
Good luck. Okay, let's go.
Hold on, chap. Hey! Hold on, Paul. We're away!
We actually have set off, started this voyage. That's a good start.
On leaving Elephant Island, Shackleton wrote, "The crew offered us the last good wishes. The men staying behind made a pathetic little group on the beach. But there was hope in their hearts, and they trusted us to bring the help that they needed."
Okay, about 100 yards to the first lot of ice, and then we should be clear and sails up.
Pulls, right, pulls in.
The crew weave their way through brash ice and head for clear water.
Should we get the main up, Paul?
From now on, they're dependent on prevailing westerly winds to carry them 800 nautical miles north-northeast to South Georgia.
Good. And again. Must remember that's main jib, main jib.
No detail has been spared to make this boat as close as possible to the one that Shackleton sailed.
It took a lot of time to find blocks, the pulleys, that are virtually identical. Blocks are notoriously dangerous because you can get your fingers caught in them. Same thing if the sails are fully inflated with the wind, you end up with the block, just swinging across. And if your head's in the way, it'll be like hitting a melon.
Well, we're off. Nice bit of breeze coming down the glacier here.
Now this is pretty bloody special. This rank's up there.
Paul Larsen broke the world speed sailing record by 8 knots just 7 weeks before coming here.
I've been fortunate to be on some amazing boats and do some amazing rides. This is the jewel in the crown. If I can navigate this boat to South Georgia, I'll have that for life.
Bird on the horizon, Point Wild, that backyard behind us. Glaciers carving off in the distance.
What could possibly go wrong?
Out in open water, the winds die down. With the boat at a standstill, the crew fire up the stove. Head chef is Royal Marine Barry Gray. He's cooking the same type of high-calorie rations that Shackleton ate.
We've got beef and fat, we've got walnuts, we've got bovril, salt, sugar, biscuits.
It doesn't look that bad, but it doesn't smell great.
Once mixed together, it's called hoosh. It provided sustenance and a morale boost for Shackleton and his men.
We're going to be fighting over the bowl, mate, I guarantee you.
Throw it down. Piping hot.
No, it's lukewarm.
Between a nice steak and dog being 10, where's a rank? If dog is 10, nice steak 0.
7.3.
Jesus, really? It's very meaty. It tastes like the stuff in the bottom of a roast tray.
There's so much lard in there that it could make you want to retch quite.
Yeah. It's grease with a little bit of gristly meat in it.
Beefy, fatty porridge.
There's some walnuts in here. There is walnuts in here, isn't there, Baz? Dog's nuts.
You've got another cupful, Tim.
I'm okay, I don't want any more. Tastes like crap. Yeah, it's going to be quite tough. 16 days.
We got that
very tough indeed.
7 p.m. The crew will work in shifts. Each man will spend 90 minutes at the helm and 90 minutes on standby.
We're overlapping now.
All right, yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, roger.
2 men on deck means 4 below.
There's more people down here trying to get comfortable, so every bit of space is valuable.
As night falls, the cameras automatically switch to infrared to reveal what life is like in the complete darkness below decks.
Just getting comfortable then.
Shackleton's account of living conditions doesn't bode well for Tim and his men. The first night aboard was one of acute discomfort. The bags and cases seemed to be alive in the unfailing knack of presenting their most uncomfortable angles to our rest-seeking bodies. A man might imagine for a moment that he had found a position of ease, but always discovered quickly that some unyielding point was impinging on muscle or bone.
Ideally, I'd like to take my jacket off, but there's just so little room, we can't. I mean, literally, we're not going to change anything for the next 2 weeks, I don't think.
There are still 780 miles to go to South Georgia, and as the sun comes up, so does the wind.
Wind's picked up a little bit. We've been doing between 3 and 4 knots.
Hey boys, we're sailing.
That is amazing.
Wow. Well, that's about as close as you wanted, I think.
Coming up, the crew fall dangerously ill.
Don't want to spew on the charts.
Battle to keep their boat afloat.
Okay.
And suffer their first Southern Ocean storm. It's 11 a.m. Expedition leader Tim Jarvis is trying to sail the Alexandra Shackleton north-northeast.
I've just come on watch for the last 15 minutes. She's essentially, as a non-sailor, it's tricky.
Like Tim, Shackleton admitted he was no sailor. It was his skipper, Frank Worsley, who had to navigate the boat with no GPS. Copying him, the crew planned to head north-northeast, then use the prevailing currents of the Southern Ocean to push them into South Georgia. To steer the boat, Tim's using 2 ropes attached to the rudder.
Have to apply a lot of tension to these ropes. They're not easy. It's a case of trying to keep the sail full. The rudder at the back here has a 3 or 4 second time lag, by which time you're thinking, have I oversteered, have I understeered?
The wind is coming from the west. If Tim steers too far to the right, they will be heading away from South Georgia. Too far to the left, and they risk being hit side-on by a wave which could capsize the boat. Out here, the water's just above freezing and can induce hypothermia within minutes, or even a heart attack.
The journey we're attempting is not an easy one. We're beginning to see precisely why that's the case. Constant attention to sailing this boat, which is kind of unresponsive.
Just pull on the left string a bit more, Tim.
A few tips from Nick on trying to hold this line.
Expedition skipper Nick Bubb monitors the boat's compass.
Okay, straighten her up then. Bit of left string. It's a very difficult boat to steer at the best of times. It's crucial we really concentrate here though, because it's a good wind angle if we do it properly.
Nick is a round-the-world yacht racer who's already tasted life on the Southern Ocean.
I'm the kind of person who loves a challenge because the feeling you get afterwards is just immense satisfaction. And I don't get that from everyday life. Okay, I can't sit in this little box anymore, so I'll come and steer again. Tim?
Okay.
Next to sail is expedition cameraman and mountaineer Ed Wardle. Despite sailing the boat already, he's never been in conditions like this.
Ed, you're on this one. So you just pull the left string to go left and the right one to go right.
We're heading north-northeast, so absolutely ideal at the moment.
Yeah.
To stay on course, Ed must keep the mainsail to his right. Eyeing his progress is expedition navigator Paul Larson.
It's going wrong up there, Ed.
Huh?
It's going wrong up there.
Yeah. Just change.
Paul corrects the sails, but now the boat side on to the wind and the waves.
Ended up side onto the waves just now, because it's easy to steer it just slightly wrong. In bigger waves we could easily get into trouble doing that. The boat could roll. If we were side onto a breaking wave we could get flattened down and even capsize the boat. And that's the very, very worst thing that could happen. So yeah, it was a little warning for me, little warning. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong.
By 5 p.m., the temperatures hit 0 degrees Celsius, and rain becomes snow. Near the start of Shackleton's journey, he also recorded an ominous change in the weather. The southwesterly gale had its birthplace above the Antarctic continent, and its freezing breath lowered the temperature far towards 0. The sprays froze upon the boat and gave bows, sides, and decking a heavy coat of mail. The accumulation of ice reduced the buoyancy of the boat, and to that extent was an added peril. We crawled about the decking forward, chipping and picking at it with the available tools.
We're getting quite a lot of snow starting to gather in the sail, starting to ice up in the foot of the sail. If too much ice builds up on the boat, then it becomes top heavy and unstable, so we're going to have to start getting rid of it.
For Shackleton, the ice and snow were the first signs of an incoming storm.
I wouldn't be surprised if we are going to get the full experience, if we're going to get that massive storm as well.
It's only their second night at sea, but already the 3 hours on, 6 hours off shift pattern is taking a toll on the crew.
So it's 1:15 in the morning, just genuinely tired, hungry and cold. Baz's snow collecting all over his head.
That was me being fed a biscuit by my mother down here. That was, yeah, checking I'm alright, still alive.
At 5 a.m., the snow is gone, but rising winds are pushing waves 2 meters high over deck. By daybreak, the waves are 4 meters high. The crew have the hatch open to vent fumes from the stove. And just as Shackleton discovered, It makes cooking almost impossible. 3 men were needed to attend the cooking. 1 man holding the lamp and 2 men guarding the aluminium cooking pot, which had to be lifted whenever the movement of the boat threatened to cause a disaster. Then the lamp had to be protected from water, for sprays were coming over the bows. To match Shackleton's intake, each crew member should be eating 4,500 calories a day, but they're losing their appetites.
Seasickness isn't easy on a little boat like this. The food's not going down very well. Woo! That's a big one. I don't feel like eating anymore, but I'm pretty sure I won't last long if I don't eat. I think if I don't eat, I've got maybe 2 days, and then I'll just start falling apart, getting cold, not managing.
As navigator, it's Paul's job to estimate where the boat is. But the rough seas are becoming too much, even for him.
Don't want to spew on the charts.
Hang on, go inside it.
Oh, cool.
We've basically been heading north-northeast all day.
I'm going to have to stick my head out soon. I'm getting quite queasy doing this. In fact, I'm going to stick my head out right now. Hold back. Here comes our barky bad navigator. What's going on here, Paul? Yeah, that was a bit looking at that for too long.
On their crossing, Shackleton's crew were hit by the biggest wave they'd ever witnessed. White surged the foam of the breaking sea around us. We felt our boat lifted and flung forward like a cork in breaking surf. We were in a seething chaos of tortured water. We bailed with the energy of men fighting for life, flinging the water over the sides with every receptacle that came to our hands.
Big waves come in through the hatch, kept open for ventilation, and squeezed up a lot of water at the bottom of the boat. You can see it sloshing around.
I think some of the planking at the front of the boat, so to open up, you can hear the waves. They're not slamming, they're literally smashing themselves into the side of the boat. Okay.
Seb can't fix the hull at sea, so resorts to the only hand pump available.
It's a very similar style pump to what they had on board the original James Caird. It's a brass tube with a piston that goes up and down. It sucks the water out of the bottom of the boat, out of the bilge. That's 4. If we don't pump the water out, it'll just keep rising and rising and rising above deck level and sink it. That's not going to happen on my watch.
By 6 p.m., the winds are gusting up to 50 knots, and the waves are as high as 6 meters.
It's hard to steer. I can't see. You just got to keep functioning and keep looking at the big picture.
The crew are at the mercy of their first Southern Ocean storm. Shackleton endured nights like this. Real rest we had none. The perpetual motion of the boat made repose impossible. We were cold, sore, and anxious.
I think everybody must be questioning why we're doing this. We've got very large waves bigger than I've ever seen before. We're dehydrated, all of us, just because nobody feels like eating or drinking, and strip away the focus and the bravado, if you like, of what we're doing. And we're in a pretty bad way. I think if a ship came across us now, they'd probably ask us if we needed to be rescued.
It's 6 a.m. The crew on board the Alexandra Shackleton are in the middle of a storm. Winds are over 50 knots, and the waves are as high as 5 meters.
This is the worst conditions we've experienced so far.
The team has sailed 200 miles from Elephant Island and still has 600 miles to go to South Georgia. They're reliving Shackleton's nightmare. So small was our boat and so great were the seas that often our sail flapped idly in the calm between the crests of 2 waves. Then we would climb the next slope and catch the full fury of the gale, where the wool-like whiteness of the breaking water surged around us.
Everything, it's absolutely solid.
It is one hellish journey. I can't feel any of my fingers.
Half a mile south, on board observer ship Australis, skipper Ben Wallace keeps a close eye on the Alexandra Shackleton.
It's hard to differentiate them between breaking white water. Swell comes up and they disappear right down behind it, and we can't actually see them until they rise up the next one.
The expedition is so dangerous that Antarctic authorities demand Ben shadow the crew. He's their only hope of rescue, but on such rough seas there's little chance he'd be able to save them. He's relying on the AIS, or Automatic ID System, to show where the Alexandra Shackleton is, but it stopped working, and all he can see is his own boat.
Their AIS has dropped out. This is an issue that we need to fix before dark, because during dark hours we can't see them at all. Alexandra Shackleton, Australis.
But there's no answer. Without AIS or radio, they're now in an emergency situation.
We'll just have to motor over to them and verbally make contact with them.
But getting close in a big sea is dangerous. One touch from the 75-ton Australis would smash the wooden boat.
Radio! You need to check your radio! Okay!
Apparently the VHF isn't working.
Seb, why would the electrics be off?
I can see the AIS light, it's not transmitting.
They have no way of contacting us other than, waving, which kind of requires us being this close all the time. It would be very difficult.
Whilst alone on the Southern Ocean, Shackleton wrote, "We were a tiny speck in the vast vista of the sea, the ocean that is open to all and merciful to none, that threatens even when it seems to yield, and that is pitiless always to weakness. The forces arrayed against us would be almost overwhelming."
I can't think of anything more horrific there's a very good chance of a ship sinking down there, a greater likelihood of being sunk than not being sunk.
It's 6 p.m. In 4 hours, the boat will be in complete darkness and undetectable to the Australis.
Yellow light means it's not transmitting. So we need a green light. Okay, making progress, which is good. Australis, this is Seb, over.
But no one can hear him. As the waves build and daylight fades, they're losing sight of the boat.
Alexander Shackleton, Australis.
As darkness falls on the Alexandra Shackleton, engineer Seb is still trying to fix the electrics.
Pretty serious if we can't get this sorted out. Well, if they can't see us, they can't track us. It means they don't know where the hell we are. It's a big ocean out here.
I think there's a couple
Big
more
ocean.
handles.
If they can't get back in contact, they'll be alone at the mercy of the Southern Ocean with no hope of rescue, exactly like Shackleton. "4 hours without AIS, the Australis crew are struggling to locate the boat.
Alexander Shackleton, Australis.
Losing them certainly not pleasant idea. Don't want to be steaming around too quickly in close proximity to them. With that, we have no idea where they might be.
After 5 hours trying to solve the problem, Seb isolates 2 wires.
See this little wire? Yeah. I think that is pulled out of one of these crimps over here. Well, there's only one way to find out. Push 2 wires together and hope for the best. We either blow up something or all this stuff comes off. Has it done it? I think it's working. Australis, this is Seb, over. Are you picking us up at all? Over.
We are indeed. It's here, so yeah, well done.
Well done, Seb. That's how you do it.